doctor.
Criselda was diagnosed with HIV 14 years ago while pregnant. Her daughter was born, thankfully, without HIV, and she's lived a healthy, symptom-free life ever since. Her pioneering approach to living positively has seen her named as one of the top 10 influential women in South Africa, and Madiba himself has called her a light for the world to see and a role model for African women. So it's a huge privilege to have you on the set of Hello, Dr. Criselda. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It feels great to be here.
It's wonderful praise to be given, that you were given, but I want to go to the flip side of that. Have you ever experienced the stigma of living with HIV?
It's interesting that the stigma I experience every day is within my field, being in media, that people would regard Criselda Kananda as a celebrity, but everywhere I go, it took years for my colleagues to start recognizing that I do contribute on television and radio. That makes me a media personality, not just an AIDS activist. For me, I truly believe that stigma comes in different forms, and thank goodness that I don't have personal stigma. Continue to voice out my opinion and get them to realize that as you call me an activist, you're saying that I'm activating a disease, and I'm not activating the disease. Instead, I'm helping people find ways of living with the condition. Which,
in my book, quite frankly, is a better stigma to have, that you're an AIDS activist as opposed to just an actress or media personality. So I think it's a good thing, actually. But let's go back to your diagnosis 14 years ago. Back then, that was almost a death sentence.
No, I remember vividly my doctor saying, I have good news and bad news. Good news is that the baby's growing very well, and you and the baby are doing so well, but you have AIDS. It just did not make sense that you're saying, I'm doing well, the baby's doing well, and I had miscarried the previous year. So it was good news to hear that all is going well. Then he says you have AIDS. And I just made it my business to even understand the difference between HIV and AIDS, and which is what I've been preaching all these years, that there is a huge difference. In order for us to strengthen prevention, we need to educate people about that difference, because as you get diagnosed, you can't help but feel that you've been given a death sentence. You walk away preparing yourself to death. One of the major mistakes I made as I walked away from those rooms confused, I went on a seafood diet, and in my understanding, seafood meant seafood I eat, because I don't want to die thin. And you know, with little knowledge, you make such horrible decisions. And I thank God every day that I managed to just focus and start paying attention to what it meant, to being diagnosed with HIV and what my responsibilities are. And like you said in your intro, that thank God that you know, my daughter was born without HIV, because I did what was supposed to be done.
You are not on antiretroviral treatment?
Not yet.
And you haven't been for not yet.
Yes.
Interesting statement that in itself too. Yeah. But you haven't been for 14 years. So how have you managed your disease?
I think I paid attention to detail. And detail was saying, in our midst, we have an immune deficiency causing viral infection. Like all viral infections, it causes your immune system to be weak. Therefore, what does it mean for me as an individual? It means if I were to take alcohol, it must be minimal, because already I have a compromised immune system. It means I don't smoke, because I understand what smoking does. It means as I eat the 5 different colors of fruit and vegetables, I understand the benefit thereof. I don't eat because food is nice. I eat food so I can strengthen my immunity.
Criselda, I'm inspired by your outspokenness. It's fantastic. Thank you. After the break, we'll look at the difference between HIV and AIDS and how we're doing in the battle against this pandemic that's robbing South Africa of its most valuable resource, our people.
Coming up, the drastic difference between HIV and AIDS deciphered.
I want to live the best life. Hello, doctor.
Welcome back to Hello Doctor. HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus. It's the name of the virus that infects our immune system and damages it severely over a period of time. Some viruses, like the ones that cause colds or the flu, stay in the body for a few days, whilst the HI virus never goes away. When a person becomes infected with HIV, that person becomes HIV positive and will always be HIV positive. AIDS is different. AIDS stands for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome and is essentially an advanced HIV disease. A person with AIDS has an immune system so weakened by HIV that the person usually becomes sick from one of several opportunistic infections or cancers. Once a person has been diagnosed with AIDS, he or she is always considered to have AIDS. Now, Mark, I understand that you don't even like the term AIDS.
No, I don't like it, and the term arose in the early description of the pandemic before the virus was actually identified. One needed a case definition, and the cases involved patients who had AIDS, who did have advanced HIV disease. So I see it as quite having very negative connotations.
Would you agree, Criselda? I mean, is that...
I fully agree, because, when we educate people about other conditions, we don't say hypertension, stroke, we don't say diabetes, gangrene, but with HIV, we say HIV AIDS. And AIDS is a consequence of not taking care of being HIV positive. And I think in your introduction, spot on, if people can just pay attention to that detail, because when you have HIV, you don't have AIDS yet.
Well said. Mark, what about the prevalence today?
The prevalence is high. I mean, that's the bottom line. And in a country of approximately 42 million people, approximately 2 million people have HIV. So that means that it's a 20th or 1 in 5. Wow. And imagine if you're in an elevator and there's 6 people, one could have HIV. It's extremely common.
Sure. I want to ask the big question, how do we tackle this pandemic? And I know it's an opinion, and I know we don't all have the answers, but look at your screens for a moment. This is a world map with territories that have been resized according to a specific subject. In this case, this is total population. But on the next screen, this is a world map resized in terms of HIV prevalence. That is a frightening, frightening image. How do we tackle that pandemic? Mark, what do we do? I mean, I feel like, is there hope?
There is hope. The way to tackle it is tackle it very well, very honestly, working hard on every single level imaginable, within the family, within the individual, within the healthcare system. It has to be tackled appropriately. The tools are there now. We can access the tools, the medications, everything in some way is available, and we need to use it very well.
What would you say about our government strategy, Criselda? You've been quite vocal about that.
My opinion is that of our current strategy is just so curative that there is no prevention message. We talk about these stats, and yet we forget that there's 40-odd million people who are not infected, who can be prevented from contracting the virus. There's only just above 5 million people who have the virus, and we can prevent those people from having AIDS. And it's in getting people educated about even how we cook our food, because majority of black people who are infected, I will talk about black people because that's my experience in my field, that many of them don't even know how to cook vegetables. You ask any black person, they will tell you that I come from an environment where cabbage is boiled until it's cream white, then you hoy in a lot of cooking oil, you fry it, it's golden brown. By the time you eat it, the nutritional value is gone. Yeah. And if we can start with those basics and going back, I mean, we were talking about the statistics earlier on, understanding that those are not just numbers, those are human beings. Human beings with dreams, human beings who wanted to be a somebody, and provide a platform that balances one being scared of acknowledging their status to an environment that says help is at way and what help is available. Sure. Help that talks to your psychological well-being, help that talks to your financial well-being, because a lot of people get stressed from not knowing how to manage their finances. When you die from stress, we would say it's HIV, only to find that you just did not know how to manage stress.
Sure. Now, we've had some successes, though, in mother-to-child transmission. Mark, I want to come to you there in a moment. But essentially, mother-to-child transmission is when an HIV-infected woman passes the virus to a baby. This can occur during pregnancy, labor and delivery, or breastfeeding. Without treatment, around 15 to 30% of babies born to HIV-infected women will become infected with HIV, and a further 5 to 20% will become infected through breastfeeding. Criselda, did you breastfeed?
If I had known what I know now, I would definitely would have breastfed my baby. But unfortunately, at the time, I was told it was a complete no-no. And understanding the benefits of that first breast milk from a mother, especially nutritionally, I would have. When we give mothers antiretrovirals, our primary aim is to minimize the viral load. Once the viral load is minimal, the risk becomes minimal. And if the viral load is low, then we need to be giving mothers an option to breastfeed their babies.
Absolutely. How would you try and sum up a message of hope, Mark? What would you want to leave us with?
HIV is very manageable, like many other conditions. One has to take responsibility. One has to inform oneself of one's options. In terms of prevention, one does need to know one's status again and again, and one does need to take precautions.
I like that. Regularly check. Don't just have a once-off. Right? Mark, thank you, Criselda.
And, in picking up from what the professor is saying, that as we introduce even condoms, we need to introduce them as a tool that shows commitment, that shows love. But unfortunately, our current strategies are saying if you're promiscuous, you can't stick to one partner. Use a condom. So why would I introduce it in a committed relationship? Right. And we need to go back to the drawing board and realize that even through our messages, we confuse people. That let condoms be seen as a tool that prevents unplanned pregnancies and sexually transmitted infections. And when we, re-educate in that manner, we're putting dignity into a choice that is made, and not a choice that is made because you want to do something wrong. When we bring back the human into HIV, many people would start reflecting and realizing that these are human lives, not just statistics, they're not just numbers, but human beings.
The H back into HIV, yeah. I love that. Thank you, Criselda. Thank you so much, Mark. Education, as you've heard, is key to stemming the tide of HIV infection in South Africa. As the late Liz Taylor said, it's one thing to die of AIDS, it's quite another to die of ignorance. Just the thought makes me break out into a sweat.
Hello, doctor.